Another draft physics video production. Pretty much presentation more than it is a production, but anyway. So the wise monkey. Hey Gary, love you, dude. Crap. I don't know what that means. Love without respect is, pretty much useless, and clearly you have no respect for me because you keep doing this crap that I tell you I really just don't like. I don't like this jargon culture. Culture of jargon. Anyway, age of reason. Who doesn't have anything to do with being reasonable? Anyway, I'd rather see you arguing with someone in the field rather than YouTube goons who don't even make content as well. Yes, well, the fact that so few people make content in the sense of content for which they would like interaction and dialogue or anything like that, except for with flat earthers. Like I said, they'll pick the most rotten fruit they can find to pick on and to make fun of, but they seem to have no will to actually discuss how rotten the foundations of the standard model are, how their conclusions are based on just shit they made up, one possible explanation, and they've decided to write it in stone as stated, when it's still really, really unproven, undemonstrated by any preponderance of evidence. So they have jumped to conviction, they've jumped to conclusions, they've clearly jumped the integrity of their evidence, gone way beyond what the evidence indicates. They don't want to have that conversation because they're going to lose in that conversation, clearly. Because it's stark, it's startling if you go investigate just how sloppy the science is, and that'll be part of all these other comments. And they just won't even concede it, not a single bit of it. They won't concede how bad the Eddington experiment was, and how weak a proof it is, and how bad most of the experiments on, well, all of them are, in terms of this lensing issue, especially around suns that have huge coronas and all. I mean, it's just such garbage. The science is garbage. LIGO. I mean, you go on and on. Just made up crap. Alright. You're very smart and you speak well. Well, I'm fairly competent at having my brain throw out these words in some sort of decent order and at some sort of decent rate. But that's about it. I'm just merely adequate. It's not even adequate. It's good enough, apparently. I think you deserve to exchange thoughts with someone at least on your level. Well, somebody who's got some sort of, apparently, others just don't have any balls. Alright. Yeah, get Kim Wheeler to talk with him already, goddammit. Yeah, get Kim Wheeler to talk with anybody who will explain physics to him. Again, he just argues with dead people and the invisible ones. Ones where he says he's won the debate and there's no evidence the debate ever happened. A goat is on his level only because he's got his head up you know what. Oh, so he's afraid to say. Alright, well, we'll block him later because there's absolutely no point in that kind of rhetoric, no matter who you're talking about. No point at all in typing stuff like that. Again, typing, look, I'm doing this. Obviously my personality has to leak into it because it's got to come up with all this crap on the fly. But when you're typing comments, you actually get to read them and look at them and say, gee, is that what I really want to say? Is that how I want to represent myself? You have time to think about it. I don't really have time to think about it. I have to just, throw this crap out there from my knowledge base immediately now. A lot different. So you can cut me some slack for being a slob in how I say things now and then. But you people don't have any fucking excuse. You can see yourself typing nigga, and faggot and all that crap. I don't see myself doing it when I do it. I don't get to edit myself, you fuckheads. You do. So you should be held to a little bit higher standard. Alright, so, what the fuck was this? Density of iron. Okay, so this guy, wait a minute, like, some sort of I gotcha moment. Oh, he posts me to a link that tells me the ratio between air density and the density of iron. Now, first, what the fuck air is, What do you mean air? Air where? Air 10 feet from outer space or air on the ground? What air are you talking about? I mean, it doesn't even make any sense. You can't even define what air is, in the sense that air completely changes. A foot off the ground versus 30,000 feet. The air is completely different. So what the hell is that? So anyway, yes, obviously there's a ratio. So yeah, great, 6,174. So a foot of iron is the same as 6,000 feet of atmosphere. Okay. Yes, standard cup wise, but what was the standard cup of air? I mean, it's just such a silly thing to say, in my opinion. I mean, it's just silly to say that mathematically sums it up. Yes, air is the same. A foot off the ground, 30,000 feet, same air. I don't know why airplanes are worried about pressurizing and all that kind of crap when it's all the same air. I don't know why mountain climbers have to worry about suffocating. Same air, same cup of air. I mean, heat-wise even. I mean, the temperature differences are gigantic. And, heat is another obstacle to have to work your way through if you're some little moving thing in space. Heat moves you. Heat is why they're saying the little Sputniks we put out there in beyond the solar system now. The whole reason why those satellites have a little fluctuation in their gravity calculations is because they have a thermal engine, and they haven't accounted for every heat reflection inside the device. But whatever. I'm just saying, so okay, this is hardly addresses my point that making an approximation, saying I'm going to put 6,000 feet of atmosphere, that changes in all kinds of ways based on weather even, and I'm going to say it's the same as this hunk of steel, and I'm going to make a proportional statement, say these two are the same thing. I was saying that was kind of weak physics. So instead of just conceding, yes, that's kind of sloppy. That's a little bit too lazy. Now, maybe they did more calculations behind the scene. Maybe they took more things into account behind the scenes. They didn't tell us what those things were. And so I was just saying, on the surface, that's a pretty crude thing to do, is to say, look, we took a foot of steel off, and that's the same as 6,000 feet of atmosphere. Is it? I'm not too sure it is. All right. So this guy says that's a valid, pertinent citation. It's not a citation. It's just the fact that it doesn't give me any information I didn't already claim existed. I surely didn't say anything like, there's no ratio between a standard cup of steel or iron and a standard cup of air. Well, of course there is. But that's not what we're talking about. I'm talking about all the other variables. So I say to the Asperger's guy, how so? It addresses none of the relevant problems. Barometric pressure is a variable. That's one. Humidity, huge. Okay, the amount of water is another molecule in the atmosphere. And it can be a variable amount from pretty high extremes in terms of adding more density to the air. Purity of the air. Iron. What is a standard piece of iron? Is there all irons the same? No. That's demonstratable. Wind is a variable. I mean, how pure the iron is makes a difference. Wind is a variable, yes, and heat is a variable. So I could have listed, I should have said, etc., etc. There's, a whole list of variables in the atmosphere. And all change density and resistance to motion. You should be able to understand that the atmosphere at 1,300 feet, I should have said 6,000, so that was my bad, is very different than at 1 foot. Comparing a standard cup to a standard cup is useless math when there are so many variables. So this is what science does, though. They do this all the time. They tell you they have a formula, and the fact is the formula is really a piece of crap. It doesn't accurately predict anything. They do this with the two-slit experiment. They say, hey, look, our formula tells you exactly where everything is. Well, no, it doesn't, actually. If you actually do the math, it gets kind of messy. Everything isn't exactly where it's supposed to be. So this is, again, and they've never even done the experiment where they got the photons that are supposed to be 1 in a billion. I mean, 1 in a billion, I'm supposed to go, 179 degrees. Well, why don't they ever put photographic film and let the experiment run for 5 years and see if they pick up one of those babies? Because they won't. It's a simple answer. because their frickin' model is wrong. They don't understand correctly what is taking place. All right, an age of reason says one of his completely stupid things. Nothing is ever proven. It's a retarded statement. There's lots of things demonstrated beyond any reasonable doubt, and that's all we have, is the fact that, and you can prove statements like it would be impossible for you to flip 1 billion pennies and get 1 billion heads in a row. It's impossible in a human lifetime, or even in the lifetime of the planet Earth. It's not going to happen, asshole. It's a statistical non-possibility. We live in a completely fictional reality, which is more crap. Yes, you do, because you're not seeking to understand, okay? It's because you've given up. You think it's too complicated. Well, it's really not that complicated. It's a physical universe. There's all kinds of cause and effect that reveals itself in front of us all the time. We can be pretty reliable. If we throw a bowling ball on a bowling alley and it doesn't go in the gutters, that it's going to hit fucking pins. All right? It's a certainty. There's lots of stuff that can be understood in this bullshit, that because human beings make up religions and because human beings make up fantasy fucking fables about entangled photons or some other bullshit, that somehow we can't do it right. Of course we can do it right. The fact that some humans do it wrong doesn't prove that it can't be done right, retard. Trying to figure it out will drive a sane man mad. No, what drives the sane man mad is just how fucking stupid everybody else he's talking to is. They're all fucking insane. So yeah, living in the asylum is rough. Many have tried, none have succeeded. Well, more horseshit. The fucking Wright brothers succeeded. There's lots of success stories where somebody understood there's a concept here of, and I can master the concept. I can figure out how it works. So just more bullshit. Lots of people put duct tape on things and fixed it. So fuck you. Even religion and spirituality, there's no fucking such thing as a spirituality. It's an attempt to rationalize the fact that absolutely nothing beyond the immediate scope of the senses can be explained. Well, whatever the fuck that means, everything can be explained. So it's just bullshit. I mean, I don't even know how you make such an outrageous statement. I mean, and here you are deriding the religious and the spiritual, and yet you're making a statement that's more preposterous than anything they've cooked up. This idea that somehow it's all too complicated? Are you fucking nuts? It's all too fucking simple. Our programming, the fact that, oh, why do I speak English? Oh, that's right, because I was raised speaking English. Fuck, that's pretty easy to understand. I mean, what kind of idiot are you saying this horse shit? There will never be an answer. Fuck you. And every day, the more I learn, the less I know. Well, then you're really fucking doing it wrong. I mean, really. The more you masturbate, the less you, what? I mean, you're just retarded. You can't do it right then. You can't do thinking right. Life is, as they say, but a dream. Oh yeah, fuck you. It's really happening, asshole. These are real events in the real fucking universe. And just make it all go away because you don't want to go be bothered. You're just lazy. You're the age of lazy. You're not the age of reason. What matters when suffering exists? Question mark. Oh, I can't figure out that even matters. When happiness exists, well, when happiness exists, suffering doesn't matter to the person who is happy. So again, just more horseshit. That you can't be having a great day and still lament somebody having a bad day, and they can't even run across your mind. I mean, more bullshit. Same with suffering. When someone is suffering, they cannot think of happiness. More horseshit again. Yes, they can. Just doesn't do much. It's not a very good aspirin. Fuck you. Because it becomes a foreign concept to them. So just more horseshit. Boy, God, are you obnoxiously irritating. This is just crap. I mean, you're just spewing absolute nonsense. I am sure that everything in the medical and scientific world is nothing but a hoax. Well, then you're just so fucking stupid. I mean, how's penicillin a hoax? God, you're just such a fucking idiot. A lie. Fuck you. I mean, this is so destructive to actually getting to the liars as some asshole who's calling everyone a liar. Oh, it's not just the boy who cried wolf. No, everybody's a fucking liar. Fuck you. And there are answers to these things, but oh, well, there was no answers and now there is answers. But I wouldn't know how to bring that answer to the popular mind. Well, then you ought to just shut up. You don't know how to do anything. So yeah, just shut the fuck up. I don't know if it can be done. Well, obviously it can be done. Anybody can turn on a video and articulate something reasonable, or they can say something completely stupid. Your choice, asshole. How could you read this slop and even believe yourself? Anyway, I probably shouldn't comment anyway. That's correct, because I have been so out of the loop. No, you're loopy, okay? You're out of every loop of almost everything I ever had an interest in. Well, I'm sorry you're finding your life inadequate. You're finding the things needing duct tape. You can't find any. You can't find anything to fix. You can't find any project to distract yourself. And therefore I don't have any context to suggest anything at all. Well, you suggested a lot of crap here is what you suggested. Absolute crap. All right. So, yes, I did that one. I did that one. Here's another one. Okay, the density of air at sea level is 1.2 whatever, while the density of air at 6,000 feet is 1.0. Okay, it's a rather substantial difference. So can we recognize that? It's almost a 15% difference, right? Something like that. Close to 20, but 15. All right, no fucking shit it's different. But there is clearly not enough variability to invalidate. So he says in bold letters, a 15% difference doesn't change anything. Well, I listed 4 different variables there, and those are only the 4 I thought of at the top of my head. So you're saying a 20% difference in heat doesn't matter. A 20% difference in humidity doesn't matter. None of this stuff matters. My back-of-the-envelope calculation was meant to show that the 6,007 foot to 1 ratio was at least plausible. Whether it's plausible or not isn't the point I was making in the video. The fact that you can do this simple on the back of the envelope fucking calculation and say, I'm just going to pretend that this is good enough experiment. Okay, even though the results are critical to how many of these little muons go through and how your calculation turns out, you get any of that wrong, it's going to completely fuck up the results. But you're just saying, I don't need to worry about margin of error. So this is exactly what I'm saying. You're just demonstrating that you have no respect for the margin of error, just as Eddington didn't. And you just couldn't give a damn. Okay, fuck it, I'll just make up my own. Amazing. You need something to vary enough that it would be significant. Well, again, I don't know, 20% isn't enough? You show nothing of the sort. I'm supposed to show it for all of these things. I don't know how they did the calculation. I was just pointing out that this is a pretty dramatic calculation to make, that you're going to sit there and approximate 6,000 feet of atmosphere that's constantly changing. I mean, every 10 feet, the temperature changes. Every 10 feet, that means there's so much more activity in the molecules, right? And the activity in the molecules is the same as increasing density, right? If I make it hot, I make it harder to get through for something that's trying to, interact. There are only 2 things I hate in this world, and this is Lambda, useless idiot. The Dutch people who don't respect other people's cultures, and I guess you should have an and in here, some people who can't count, people who butcher jokes, people who post, well, this is really a waste of time, pointlessly long, well, there we go, off-topic responses, there we go, hypocrites. Okay, that's enough of reading him, right? So there's just no point. Lambda can disappear and none the harm. Stuff you with the Metaplix, I don't know, Dutch reference. Well, whatever. The whole fact that people aren't allowed to hate cultures is just laughable. I mean, it's just laughable. Of course, that's one of the things you should do. Ironically, I have no problem with people who misuse the word ironic. So another waste of time. I support this, and now I support everything you said. Well, that's because you're an idiot. So if you're on Lambda's side, I should just block you. But he goes way back on YouTube, so what the hell? I'll let him spew his putrid crap. All right. Anyway. So anyway, I appreciate getting some sort of response, but it wasn't the response, the typical bullshit. Wasn't it just like Piro saying, oh yeah, water does diffract in the single slit experiment? No, diffraction isn't the point. The point is, does it interfere? Does it create an interference pattern? No, it doesn't create interference. Unless you put interference in, you're not going to get interference out in water. So the experiment doesn't demonstrate the principle at all. It demonstrates exactly the opposite. The analogy doesn't work. And all you've done is quote mine the evidence to find an analogy that does work. That's all you've done. You just said, I can't make mammal fit into this category, but I can make elephants look like it. Yeah, so you just selected right out of the evidence and just says, I'm going to use this evidence because this evidence is on my side. And I'm just going to ignore all the stuff that's not on my side. That's all. So that's all the only game being played. I mean, I'm just saying that if you're going to respond to me, then you have to in some way deal with the real question. The real question wasn't whether they have an equation for the standard cup of air and the standard hunk of iron. I didn't posit that that was the mystery. That we can't figure out how much how much atomic weight iron has and how much atomic weight the average hunk of air has, whatever the average hunk is. you know, no, we know that there's oxygen and nitrogen and whatever in the air. I didn't even get to smog, right? Smog's another issue, right? Because there's a ton of particles that are in the lower atmosphere from all the diesel crap that never gets to the upper atmosphere. So there's a ton of these particles all over the place in the smogosphere, the place where people live. And he was right in the middle of a city, right? Cambridge. He went to Cambridge. So he went from the top of an isolated mountain to Cambridge, a place where there's a huge amount of automobile emissions. Same difference. Doesn't matter. Irrelevant. I don't think so. All right. Anthony Reynolds, you're just wrong. Well, fuck you. Prove it. You don't understand the simple argument that particle gravity has a friction problem. Well, again, I do understand it, and I've pointed out in the past that it's a real problem. I've addressed it and pointed out that, well, guess what? We sort of know that these different objects have a different friction problem. I mean, clearly the subatomic particles, some of them have a real problem. They have a real drag problem. They don't get anywhere. And you want to explain why they do? So if you're going to argue the conventional nonsense, right? Do you really think protons travel through the universe billions of miles? Accelerated protons? Or do you agree with that? No, it's helium nuclei. So there's a distinction. Well, why does that distinction exist? I mean, you certainly could at least acknowledge that electrons aren't flying around, right? That you can't just go up into space and put a cloud chamber up there and catch a whole bunch of electrons flying by, right? Unless you're next to some sort of object emitting them. You're kind of out of luck, aren't you? I would so yes, it's a real problem. It has to really be understood. Okay, but it's not a decisive, it can't possibly be explained why a material object can overcome force drag, but electrons and protons can't. That's impossible. There's no possible way to explain it. Well, I've given possible explanations. You never answered that problem. Well, I have. You just obfuscate. Well, I don't. There's whole videos devoted to the subject, so I obviously haven't obfuscated it. I haven't denied its existence like the de-Hilsters do. I've said it's a real problem. I have to explain it. And yeah, it's a tough nut. Distracted and red herrings your way out. So again, none of that happened. These are all just lies. And why should I accept liars? Why do your comments have to be prefaced with lies? Why don't you just make this great counter argument saying, no, electrons don't get bothered by anything called drag. They're not inhibited in their movement at all. I could shoot electrons to the moon, no problem. That might work on your anti-natal, so just more irrelevancy, but it doesn't work on me. Well, who the fuck cares what works on you, asshole? You're a fucking shit-talking jackass who just lies about other people. It also doesn't work on smart people. So again, you're claiming yourself to be smart. You're not proving it. Is this this is a smart response? You haven't exactly said anything. You're just going to have to accept one of three things. I don't have to accept any of your nonsense, your lies. You'll never convince those critics of yours who bring up valid points. So again, they're saying they have valid points, which they don't. I'm the one who's brought up valid points that none of you have said anything about. So why don't you answer some of my questions, right? You just keep pretending that you're sitting in some place where you've answered questions. You haven't answered any of these questions. Your theory is crap. It's inconsistent. It doesn't match the evidence. And yet you just keep talking out of your fucking ass. I'll be back. Anyway, you'll never convince these critics of yours who bring up valid points. So again, yeah, and completely ignore all the points I've brought up. And again, what valid points have they brought up? Defenses of what in what dramatic way? They haven't in any way explained how my model for magnetism fails, or my model for electricity fails, what experiment it doesn't explain. Anyway, only to be slammed with off-topic, distracting ad homs and insults. Why don't you prove one of these things? Show me the link to this event taking place, this unfairness I've committed. Show me where I'm being unfair or where I'm evading the argument. So instead of showing the evidence, you just do this puke. You just spew this crap, and you say you're being the fair cop. Look, I'm the honorable guy. I'm making all these accusations, been providing no evidence to back any of them up. So give up your argument the theory is correct. Well, I'm not going to give up on the fact that it's simpler and it explains more. And explains it much more deeply. Again, show me. Link me to your explanation of magnetism. Link me to any video on the entire internet on the subject of magnetism that you say is so much more detailed than mine. That explains why there's attraction and repulsion. That explains what's causing the effect. Go ahead, show it to me. Somebody brings up induction somewhere, but yeah, the whole point is show me. Yeah, it's in the next comment. Show me a theory of induction that explains it more simply and more completely than mine. All right, modify or elaborate on why your theory is correct, irregardless of what basic logic would seem to suggest. So again, more nonsense, just nothing statement. I'll just accuse you of being illogical. There, I've said it, you're illogical. What did I demonstrate it with? Oh, nothing. That's okay with you. And then you sit there and talk as if you have some give a shit about the scientific method or being in any way intelligent. And you sign this Anthony Reynolds. Oh yeah, how do I know you from anybody else? Oh, an account with absolutely zero content. What the fuck's that? Anthony Reynolds. Bozo the Clown. What's it matter? You don't produce anything. You don't demonstrate anything. You don't put anything on the line. Just weak sauce. Let's see. The biggest advantage of his theory is that it solves the problem of induction. That's right. It explains charge in a rational way. And charge is everything. Alright, so, anyway. Just crap. Like I said, you know, I'm going to delete it because it's crap. You make accusations you don't demonstrate. I mean, why should I accept you establishing some norm to some first-time listener or viewer, and you're just going to make some accusation that something hasn't been done when it has been? And you're just a fucking liar. All right. All right. My name is Mud. So again, I mean, what kind of rational skills do you have? Do you have any rational skills? I mean, you show up here with my name is Mud, and then, you know, invite me to have some fucking commitment to, as if you're somebody. Okay, I'd be willing to do a live room with you. Well, why don't you first try to do one by yourself? Why don't you first try to just make a video? Again, all you need is a working mic. To get into a live room, you're going to have a working microphone anyway, and you're going to have YouTube software loaded on your fucking computer. So why don't you show that you can do that first? And then you can make like an audio video, or you can just make a video of a picture of a, you know, little rubber ducky or something. Just some demonstration that you're capable of doing any of this at all. And again, the point is if you have some sort of point to make, why don't you just make a video? All right, you know, here, I'll make the offer to you people. So all of these critics, okay, I will give you free server space. I'll upload any images you want, any links, any text, whatever you want. I'll make a whole web page just for you, okay? I mean, put a content on it, but I'm not going to put your lies on it. So unless you can make a physics argument, you want to present a physics argument, I'll put your physics arguments online for free. Just link me to your great argument. Where's your fucking great counter argument? You can't produce anything on the internet, anything with any durability. So I'll make a web page for you. Okay, I'll give you free server space, put all the images and all the videos you want on it, as long as they're somehow relevant. You know, and not layered in lies. If you're going to premise every one of your points with a lie, you're just defeating the whole purpose, right? I mean, isn't that how you defeat any opponent in an argument? Is just to make a bunch of fake accusations. You're a child molesting, pedophilic, wife beating, blah, blah, blah. You know, you just make a bunch of accusations so the other guy has to waste all his time defending himself against the accusations. I mean, isn't that the greatest tool for cheating in an argument ever? Is just to put somebody on the defensive. You say in 4 words what they have to explain in 490 words. I mean, fuck you. So anyway, I'd be willing to do. So this is just a liar, right? He's not willing to do the room. But anyway, not unconditionally. Yeah, sure. First, it should be moderated by an independent party. What the fuck is an independent party? And what do you need a moderator for? So again, you're just such cowards, right? I mean, if I mistreat you or do anything wrong in the conversation, it's a public conversation. There's no evidence you have no evidence that I've ever had a conversation with somebody and then deleted the video. There's no evidence that I've ever done that. So every interview, every interaction I've ever had with another person online, I've deleted none of them, ever deleted any portion of them. I haven't edited them. I haven't done anything to them. And so you're what? You're afraid to have the thing being publicly moderated? I mean, we're going to be revealed as liars and scum, right? If I cheat you in some way, it's going to be right there in public. And that's not enough for you? I mean, wow, what a pathetic coward you are. Or at least there should be some guidelines as to what evidence will be acceptable. Well, the evidence of your lies won't be acceptable. So yes, I'm going to point out as soon as you premise your arguments with a bunch of lies, I'm going to say, I'm not answering that. How dare you? How dare you change the fucking subject, you fucking lying piece of shit? Yeah, that's what I'm going to say. So if you can't make your arguments rational and relevant and on the subject, yeah, the conversation's going to end. And it'll be public and I'll be able to see it. Because, yeah, I'm only going to take so much of your shit. And you can see the shit here. I mean, I'll read this shit. I mean, it's just complete shit. I have no obligation to keep responding to shit. All right. Or at least there should be some guidelines as to what evidence will be acceptable. You know, you can make any claim you want. You want to cite some bizarre, silly experiment that I have no clue what it is in the conversation. That's fine. And I'll just point out how, well, I'm sure there's a bunch, like 19 different little black boxes in that experiment where they've made a bunch of assumptions. I'm sure they've just sit there and done this casual thing. Well, a cup of air equals, 1 cup of steel equals 1/6000th of a cup of air. There, I've done all the math I need to do. Problem solved. I'm sure there's a lot of that in that experiment. Well, we started with entangled photons that had a 15-year relationship, and then they had a little rocky period, and then, and then they got back together again. That's what we started with. So they were photons that sort of liked each other, but, they did have some trouble, so blah, 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 blah. Okay, and these should be decided ahead of time, however that means. So why don't you show me where this debate takes place, the one by your guidelines? Why don't you show me 2 people doing that? And then we'll just use their guidelines. How about that? Why don't you show me the perfect debate with the perfect moderator, and then you can show me that that's the way I want it to happen. And I'll behave like one of those 2 people, which would be the joke, like you would do that. No chance. And these should be decided ahead of time, and they should be vetted by someone unaffiliated. So again, this process isn't good enough. And again, I would argue that we don't need it. Okay, we don't have to have any moderated debate. You can make a video right the fuck now, okay, and make all your slanderous comments and do all your bullshit. Right now you could do that. Nobody's stopping you. I'm certainly not stopping you. No, nothing's inhibiting you except the fact that, I'll play your crappy, shitty video and just point out what a lying piece of scum you are. That seems like the only thing stopping you. What are your thoughts? Well, my thoughts are, again, you ought to prove that you can make a reasoned argument on the subject, because there's no evidence of it here. All right, the reasoning of these speculations are: first, you always pull some little equivocation or some non sequitur ad hom fallacious BS into your online debates. So there's no evidence of that. What I do is draw pictures of how the reality works. And I start saying things like, well, in the triple slit, in the multi-slit experiment, there's an actual image projected. Okay, I mean, Professor Lewin's videos demonstrate everybody's. If you look at the multi-slit diffraction gradient images, they're round because they're using a round laser. I mean, it's such a giveaway. But I mean, and you go on YouTube and look up star laser or something. I mean, clearly diffraction gradients, whatever you put in, you get out, and you get that image in all these locations. How does wave diffraction explain that? Wave interference, destructive interference? It doesn't. All right, and when the person you're arguing with points this out, you jump down their throat or block them and declare by fiat, presumably yourself the victor. So how is this at all relevant to an online debate? Again, it's a public thing. If I do all of these horrible crimes you're saying I've committed, that's right in front of people. So what you're really saying is the audience can't figure out. The audience is way too stupid. Us other commenters are all too dumb. They can't figure out that you're pulling the wool over their eyes and you're the lying scum and blah, 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 blah. That's all you're saying, right? So you agree with me that humans are scum. So, yeah, you're more on my side than you think, asshole. For example, if someone brings up the single slit diffraction pattern, no, show me the single slit interference pattern done in water. We're not talking about a diffraction pattern. We're talking about interference. So just more bullshit. See, I mean, they're the ones changing the jargon to suit the circumstance. Oh, light spreads. Well, no, that's not under debate, asshole. What's under debate is whether photons are interfering with themselves to create an interference pattern. You claim they're arguing that Newton never did Newton's rings. So this is just a lie. It's an overt, insane, preposterous lie. I've never said anything like that at all. What I said is Young's experiment is completely meaningless in the context that Newton did the two outside surface experiment, the inside surface experiments. That's what he's famous for. So all you're saying is because he didn't put two outside surfaces and inside the context of two inside surfaces, that somehow he needed that information because that's somehow new and magical. And again, Young wasn't demonstrating that there's two patterns in the two-slit experiment. So that's the subtlety that Newton didn't know about. The subtlety that Young didn't know about is the fact that there's two patterns. All right, so there was nothing miraculous about Young. It didn't tell us anything new at all. This was all old stuff. That's what I've said. Now, how the fuck is that the same as saying Newton never did Newton's rings? How is that saying the same thing? So you can't be honest. You can't get the truth right at all. You're talking about this integrity of what experiments are going to be allowed in the conversation. Well, what kind of lies are going to be allowed in the conversation? You just overtly lied. There's absolutely no way to interpret what I've said as saying Newton never did Newton's rings. There's just no honest way to do that. Somebody points out that LIGO does prove the non-existence of a God frame. So he means an absolute reference frame, meaning that things actually have velocity. So even in Einstein's thought experiment, you can figure out that something has to have the actual velocity, right? If two twins are going to be separated by distance and you can't tell which one was moving previously. So like the one twin that goes into space could actually be stopping. They're not moving anymore. And this guy is the one still moving, who's on the Earth, because the Earth, they were already in a frame moving together. So you can't tell which twin actually has the velocity, right? So how could one age and one not age, right? Doesn't make any sense. One has to be, the truth has to be somewhere. One of them has to have the actual velocity. So again, you're the one sitting there saying somehow you've proven the non-existence of absolute velocity. No, absolute velocity exists. You can't pretend it doesn't. And again, the LIGO experiment has never done any kind of experiment. They've shown no evidence they ever did any experiments that would glean this information. And just looking for gravitational waves won't glean the information. It's not the same as doing the photon moving experiment. Completely different experiments. All right, someone points out LIGO does prove the non-existence of the God frame. So again, why did Michelson and Morley put their experiment on a big table of mercury? They did that for no good reason. turning the experiment has nothing to do with the experiment. I mean, you're just so full of shit. You yell, that's not what they're testing for. Well, because it's a dramatic truth. There's no way it proves anything about that subject because you have to do the experiment differently to prove that. As if the fact that an experiment was developed for one purpose A automatically means it. So again, so he's saying because I say LIGO isn't doing a absolute velocity experiment. Number one, I don't even accept their argument that it can possibly be done. That somehow I'm saying that every time you do an experiment, you can't learn something else. I never said that. Never said anything like that. So again, that's your perverse lie. So you're allowed to just say because I was seen, moving my hand back one day, I must be a wife beater because I moved my hand back. And that's, you couldn't be throwing a baseball or, throwing banana peels in front of the neighbor's sidewalk or something. You couldn't be doing anything innocent. No, you had to be beating your wife because you put your arm back. You're just so full of shit. Oh, insane lies. And I think if only we could... so anyway, back to LIGO. This thing is so preposterous because, they're bouncing this photon back 1,600 times back and forth between two mirrors. And they're saying they're measuring the less than the diameter of a proton is the little tiny amount of movement they're measuring. So for that to be true, you have to think that theoretically it's actually true that surfaces like a mirror are made of atoms, and you have to believe that all of the atoms on the surface of the mirror are perfectly aligned. That is, every single electron that we could maybe agree that the reflection will have to involve hitting an electron, right? That the photon has to hit an electron. Your little wavicle has to hit an electron. So every electron would have to be at exactly the same place in the orbit, exactly out here, exactly the same distance. Exactly the same distance inside the material. So this is the mirror, and you have to believe that we can make mirrors where every single electron is exactly the same distance from a surface. And so same that after 1,600 times hitting the mirror, okay, you haven't got half the distance of a proton worth of irregularity in the surface. The surface is so perfect and so perfectly regular, and they were able to measure exact, no tilt in it at all, no wobble, not a single wave in the surface at all, nothing, absolutely zero. Okay, it's so perfect. That's how preposterous their claim is. So part of their theory is that's how they can make matter like that. They can make matter that fucking perfect that they not even the half of the diameter of a proton worth of difference between every single electron they hit. So the electron they hit on this side is exactly at this location. This one's exactly at this location. Exactly. Every single electron is in that perfect condition. That's how silly their fucking argument is. That's how silly their premises are. Alright. And I think if only we could remove the kind of nonsense from discussion, we wouldn't stand a chance, whatever that means, even with your years of experience arguing your weird theories. My years of experience demonstrating that you people always will show that you have no fucking integrity, you can't stay on the subject, all you can resort to is ad hominem and lie attacks, and that's all you've got. You can never argue the substance. You never argue the argument. You're always arguing me. Period. Okay, and second, it means you will not be able to rely on controlling the stream. So again, what's the control? So you people quote mine, you make mocking videos, you Photoshop, you resort to all kinds of ways of quote mining and distorting the evidence. You claim I said something when you completely take it out of context. That's the proof. It's in every fucking one of these things. I can point out, like again, where somebody find where I said Newton never did Newton's rings. Find where I accused other people of saying Newton never did Newton's rings. That was my argument. Prove it. You won't do that. But this is what every one of these fucking pieces of shit comments are full of, is these fucking lies. Just premised by lies. and deleting links and other pieces of evidence as you see fit. So again, more nonsense. They're all public videos. Again, everybody can see what I'm deleting and why I'm deleting it. You're the ones who can't possibly make an argument on the subject. You can't ever answer any of the questions I've asked. All you do is keep making these preposterously inaccurate statements. But then bitch about how other side not taking your evidence surreal, whatever that means, surreal, I guess serious. Again, it's not even taking the evidence serious. It's just taking the argument serious. I just made an argument. Can the interferometer, theoretically, can your interferometer work if you have more than a proton's worth of irregularity in these surfaces? Is there any possibility of it working? I mean, aren't you going to change the phase of the two? The two light beams have to have completely consistent phase. So another thing about LIGO, it's not like they can do a million LIGO experiments and then see what the averages are. There's only one. They only have one chance to get this wave thing. So it's not like they can take an average of how the experiment comes out or something like that and rely on averages to say, well, over time, if I do the experiment a million times, I'll be able to get rid of some of these irregularities. But they can't do it a million times. They get one shot and that's it. Yeah, whatever. Just keep being the religious fanatics you obviously appear to be. All right, so just too many lies in this statement for it to survive. So, and again, just no substance, just lies. All right, sorry, dude, unconvincing. Yeah, well, likewise, duder. Just amazing. Yeah, you're pretty unconvincing too. So it's a Theoria video. Yes. Well, you haven't convinced me. So we'll call it a draw, and I'll just say fuck off. Amazing. So Lambda with Buffalo comments. Gee, really relevant. Great counter argument. We just block him. Anyway, stop wasting your energy and time on buffoons. That's all there are right at the moment. So, but whatever. Yeah, I'm sort of making that point. But I'm just saying, as soon as I start deleting the buffoons, I'm not leaving their comments up. So what's the choices here? Why don't you show me how you do it right? Yeah, right. You don't make videos. Say something controversial in the world and see how it goes for you. Have you seen Cody's lab video, Fruit Flies in a Microwave, an experiment about wavelengths? No, but why can't you people post links? Is it really that tough? But anyway, so let's play with this video. That's not the video. Where is it? Where's the fly video? That's not it. There it is. Alright, so this is a guy explaining through the standard model, using the stupid wave bullshit, all of the crap, why fruit flies aren't zapped by microwaves. So I think the only point that's really relevant, because it's all about the size thing, and the part of the size thing that you people aren't getting is the polarization argument. Because that's the only argument that really matters. Okay, is the fact that if you're below the polarization limits, you can't be disturbed by something. So if we understand that radiation to be relevant when it hits something like an electron, it has to do a specific thing to the electron, all right, for us to get specific things out, like a photon or some kind of radiation. And if it interacts and it doesn't do that specific thing, like move the electron a specific distance, then yes, it's still energy, but it's just going to be absorbed as heat. Okay, and that's all it'll be. It's just some heat. All right. So their theory, okay, is that the wavelength is deciding whether something can be hit by something. So the idea would be is something could be a certain size, and somehow magically, the wave just kind of goes over it. It doesn't create any electromagnetic functions and all of that crap. I mean, maybe I'm going to have to play the video. to get to the point, what I'm arguing to you simply is that all there is the energy, and there's this distance between them, okay, and that's what there is, and that the thing that is the thing that regular physics doesn't really know how to express is this idea of polarization. And what I would argue is polarization is this part, okay, where the alignment of the ray isn't perfect. And that means that one single electron in a place, you can sort of understand if we have an electron over here and it's going to interact, if this polarization, that is this, how much variation there was in the gun was wobbling as it's shooting bullets. You can even understand that shooting by hand, that your hand can move. And so you have some wobble in your bullets. They won't all go in the same straight line because you're wobbling as you're shooting. So, and that the wobble, the amount of offness in polarization you have is proportional to the amount of distance between your photons. That is, the less often you're shooting, the more irregular your shooting can become. That is, the faster you shoot, the more likely it is the gun is going to be pointed the same way. So the faster you're shooting, that is, the tighter the frequency, the tighter the amount of polarization. So when they say something like microwaves are 3 centimeter waves, they're saying that this is 3 centimeters. Well, the key point is this is 3 centimeters. Okay, so the 3 centimeter part is how much irregularity there are in the rays. All right, so a ray has a lumpiness, is what I'm saying. And so the 3 centimeter part is this lumpiness, not the distance of the ray. That the distance of the separation between the energy isn't the part that's important. The part that's important is the separation, how much the gun moved as it's being shot. So you can understand microwaves are kind of gigantic by comparison to visible photons. So if you were to draw a crude approximation, a microwaves would be, this kind of distance versus a photon at this kind of distance. It's 1,000 to 1 kind of big difference. And in the same sense, there's a big difference, the same kind of 1,000 to 1 difference in how much wobble there is in the individual photons. So what I would argue is, especially when working with, say, something like metals and other things, so the real question is, so obviously if your photons are coming in and there have distance between them, you can understand that if I'm the object here and I'm 3 centimeters, I'm less than 3, let's say I'm at half a centimeter, so I'm half the distance of this wobble, that it's quite likely, okay, that when these photons come through, I'm only going to get hit by half of them. Okay, so now if I only get hit by half of them, I've reduced the frequency essentially, right? So if there was before, this is what they're coming in at this frequency, and half of them don't make it, okay, I've reduced the frequency. You can see I've made the frequency twice as long. So now the radio wave, the microwaves, have gotten much weaker. Okay, so the ones I'm going to absorb, being this size, are going to be half, okay, the ones I would absorb if I was this size. And that's really all that's really happening. By fruit flies being small, what that means is the individual rays of microwaves, okay, can't impose their photon power at microwave frequency. They can only impose it at FM frequency or some much lower frequencies, and so it's a lot more benign. But the bigger I make the object, the more certain all of this energy gets into the object. So if I make the object bigger, all of this frequency information gets into the object, where it didn't get into the object if it's smaller. And then this kind of goes to like how antennas work. So, and why metal is able to do what other things aren't, which is to basically take a bunch of different rays, Okay, so there's a bunch of different rays coming in. I'm just using this symbol because that's what you understand the world to be made of. And the idea of what an antenna is doing is it's able to overcome the fact that these are way off, okay, because it can have one of the photons hit here and one of them hit down here. So these things don't have to hit the same location to be registered as an amount of energy. And so an antenna is able to pick up more of the energy because the photons don't have to hit the same location. They don't have to hit the same electron to create the pressure that creates an electron moment, okay, where the electron creates voltage. So the voltage conversion can happen without them hitting the same electron, where in other circumstances the ray has to hit the same atom, and if it doesn't hit the same atom, there won't be any conversion. The atom will just rebound, the energy will go back where it came from, and there'll be nothing that'll happen. There'll be a reflection, not an absorption event. So it's polarization that's defining it. So the only thing you people consider in your model, okay, is the distance between the peaks of the wave. Right? Now I'm just arguing the peaks of the wave are the quanta of energy. And so all you're measuring is the distance between the peaks and the waves, and you're not considering the fact that the waves, the quanta, can also have an irregularity in their progression through space. They're not on a perfect ray. So light is very tight, X-rays are even tighter, cosmic ray even tighter, gamma tighter, and then as you get sloppier, as you go to microwaves, it's getting like this, and then you get to radio waves, it's getting like this. How much separation there is this way, not how much separation there is this way. So I'm just saying, just interpreted that way, all of this can be explained. So I'm just saying it's easy to explain with a different model. You don't have to have some model of, oh, well, it has to do with how big this inductor is, and when the magnetic wave goes through, it creates an electric current. That, you don't need any of that crap. And none of that crap really gets to the point, because it pretends that one loop of wire is the same as 500 million loops of wire, and they're just somehow creating a magnetic field. And if you're creating a magnetic field, it's only on the inside, it's not on the outside. I've made lots of arguments debunking this electromagnetic wave theory crapola, and just point out that the key factor is whether or not you have a medium that can transmit the energy. And the other advantage the fruit fly has is that its water molecules that are inside of it are essentially shielded, okay, from their capacity to electrostatically connect to each other. See, I could put a bunch of water out and it can absorb the microwaves, even though the atoms are really small, because the water adheres to the other water molecules. But as long as the water molecules are not connected to the surface, and insects are known for that, right? Insects are known for the fact that they have an exoskeleton, and the exoskeleton is dry, so there's no water in it. The whole point is to keep the fluid on the inside and not have an interaction with any fluid on the outside. So their lips probably get dried out, get pretty hot, okay, in the microwave. But I'm just saying that the water molecules will, like a metal, conduct, okay, so they can capture a microwave from this ray. They could capture one here, and one here, and that'll add up to the frequency that can eject an electron. So the water molecules are vulnerable, but they're covered by an exoskeleton that isn't, and that's what absorbs the microwaves and just reflects them. So they're essentially just reflecting, okay, the heat energy that the microwaves would create, the vibration. And it can't get through the exoskeleton to the fluid. But if it could get to the fluid, they'd cook. But it can't get to the fluid. It can't get to the water molecules that are connected to each other electrically. Especially, salt water and all that kind of crap. But anyway, so it's easily explained without their nonsense theory. And my theory explains what polarization is and why it works. And so I'll go back to just to verify that we understand each other in terms of the polarizing light filters and their explanation of how it's getting blocked by the filter. You know, that's how polarization is. 50% of the light is off in this direction. That is, I'm wobbling this way. And then 50% of light, I'm wobbling this way. So you could argue the gun's wobbling in two directions. So I have polarization in both directions because I'm moving the gun in both ways, right? And that this is basically filtering for photons that either are wobbling more in this way or wobbling more in this way, and that light does come that way. So some of the light will get through because it doesn't wobble too much in both dimensions. It wobbles this way, so that light will get through. And then if I put the filter the other way, the light wobbling the other way, it will go through. But the point is that what happens to the light that doesn't get through? See, and so my simple argument is that it still goes through as energy. So it goes through this first filter. There's still, this other light is still getting through. It's just that it's been subtly broken. So, in terms of its phase. So when it goes through the filter, what's happening is a phase change. When it goes through one of the bars aren't opaque. The bars are transparent to the light, but they're changing the phase. So as I pointed out, if I had light going through, you can understand that if I knock this one out, then I've changed the phase between these two. I've changed the frequency essentially. And now when a receiver tries to receive this signal, it can't receive it because it's broken. It needs 4 of these things at the same distance to be able to say, I got that photon. And if I just take, if one of them, okay, doesn't get through the filter and its phase changed, so it still went through the filter, but its phase changed. So instead of being here, it's here, okay? Then the energy's still there, and so if I put a third filter in, I can put this back where it belongs. I can restore the phase and restore the photon. And I say the evidence for that is that these filters don't get hot. It's supposed to be blocking 50% of the light, yet I've seen absolutely no evidence that there's 50% heat in here, that this created a bunch of heat. These filters, polarizing filters, don't create a bunch of heat. So they're obviously not absorbing the light. They're not consuming it. They're not stopping it. They're not converting it. Okay, they're letting the light pass. They've broken its phase, so it can't be received. Your eye can't see it because it's missing one of the key ingredients. It's in the wrong place. And if you can restore it to the right place in time, that is, you slow this one down, and these stay the same. So it's like the argument is one of them got slowed down in the first pass. So you lost this one to here because it got slowed down. And then all you do is put through another pass where, no, that one gets speeded back up, or else you slow all of these down. So if I slow all these down, then they're going to be in the same position as this, and I'll have my regular frequency back. So I'm just saying this explains the phenomenon. Now you have a real explanation of what polarization is, something physical, and it fits the evidence. And again, we already have intuitive evidence. We already have, superficial evidence that the light isn't being consumed by the filter. It's just being broken by the filter. And you can fix it again. Alright. It's being converted from a frequency we can detect to a frequency we can't detect. Alright. That seems like more than enough, I think. So, till the next time and such. Yeah, I think that's really enough. Pretty sure. See if there's any new comments, but really, long enough video. Alright, this YouTube is so fucking stupid. It just keeps doing this filter. I don't want the filter. Alright. Till next time. Such.